Let's get right into it. Today, we're cracking open an incredible curriculum unit explainer covering one of the most misunderstood, yet absolutely brilliant creatures on the planet. Yep, we're talking about snakes. It is so fascinating to see the sheer biological engineering that lets an animal with 0 arms and 0 legs absolutely thrive in almost every environment on Earth. Let's dive into the source material. So here is the syllabus for today's deep dive. We'll be hitting 6 main areas. First, meet the snakes. Then, habitats and winter survival. Next up, anatomy and special senses, followed by hunting and feeding habits, how snakes move, and we'll wrap the whole thing up with the snake life cycle. Let's get to it. Section 1. Meet the snakes, defining the legless reptile. To really get a handle on snakes, we have to start with the basics. They are reptiles, right alongside lizards, turtles, tortoises, crocs, and gators. But what does that actually mean for the snake? Well, first off, they're vertebrates, meaning they have a backbone. Second, they breathe air with lungs, just like we do. And third, they have this incredibly tough, waterproof skin that keeps them from drying out. Now here's a massive point to remember. Reptiles don't have fur or feathers to keep themselves warm. They are what we call ectothermic. Basically, they rely entirely on their outside environment to regulate their body temperature. So if a snake is cold, like in the chilly morning hours, it literally has to lie in direct sunlight to soak up heat and get enough energy to hunt. And if it gets too hot, it has to find shade or retreat into a cool underground burrow. To put their sheer evolutionary success into perspective, out of all the different types of reptiles on Earth, snakes make up about 1/3 of them. 1/3. That's huge. And the sheer diversity within that classification is wild. On one extreme, you have the tiny western blind snake. This little guy is about as thin as a pencil and spends its life underground. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have the massive yellow anaconda. We're talking an aquatic giant that is literally thicker than a standard fire hose. I mean, some snakes can stretch out longer than a playground slide. But whether they're a tiny burrowing snake or a massive water predator, they follow one strict dietary rule. They are absolutely all carnivores. They only eat other animals. Period. Some use venom, a poisonous liquid, to take down prey and defend themselves, while others just use raw brute strength. Oh, and before we go any further, let's smash a very common myth right now. People often think snake's skin is slimy. Absolutely not true. The undeniable fact here is that a snake's skin is completely dry. No slime whatsoever. Section 2. Habitats and winter survival, from deserts to deep freezes. According to our sources, there are over 2,500 species of snakes worldwide, and about 500 of those live just in North America. But they aren't just scattered randomly. Remember how we talked about them needing external warmth? Because of that, you're going to find way more snakes in hot climates. In fact, the absolute largest snakes in the world grow in places where it stays warm year-round. Think about the logic there for a second. Because those tropical snakes don't have to waste half their day just warming up in the sun, they spend way more time hunting and eating. And more eating naturally equals massive growth. On the flip side, snakes in cooler environments are usually a lot smaller. The common garter snake is a perfect example of this. It is so adaptable to the cold that it can survive as far north as Canada's Northwest Territories. That being said, they haven't conquered the whole globe. Fun fact, there are absolutely 0 wild snakes in New Zealand, Newfoundland, Ireland, or on many other isolated islands. But where they do live, they completely master their environment. Forests, fields, deserts, swamps, even the open ocean. Snakes thrive there. Their shape and their color are perfectly evolved to help them blend right in. A tree-dwelling snake might look exactly like a branch. Other species live totally undetected in our cities and parks. And sometimes their habitats overlap with other animals in the most bizarre ways imaginable. Take the tiny Texas blind snake, which usually just lives underground eating insects. Our source material points out this mind-blowing interaction. Some eastern screech owls will actively hunt these little blind snakes, pick them up alive, and actually drop them into their own nests. Why on earth would they do that? Well, the snake acts like a live-in exterminator. It just crawls around the nest, eating the insect pests that would otherwise attack the owl chicks. Talk about a brilliant little ecosystem. So what happens when those habitats freeze solid? In the colder parts of North America, snakes have to totally change up their game plan to survive. Come late fall, they migrate deep down into burrows, caves, or rock crevices where the temperature stays just a little bit warmer. Once they're tucked in, they coil up and basically shut down. They stop moving, they stop eating, and their breathing and heart rate slow down to an absolute crawl. This state of hibernation is a massive gamble, though. If a winter is unusually brutal, a lot of snakes simply won't wake up. But those that survive will emerge in the spring, warm themselves up, and get right back to business. And the social side of this is just staggering. You can have hundreds, sometimes literally thousands, of garter snakes sharing a single hibernation den just to share body heat. And even crazier, they have this built-in GPS that usually guides them back to the exact same hibernation spot year after year.
Moving on to Section 3, Anatomy and Special Senses, built for survival.
Let's take a close look at how a creature without arms or legs is built to dominate. Starting right at the head, notice anything weird about the eyes? Snakes do not have eyelids. They literally cannot blink. Instead, their eyes are protected by a permanent, transparent scale called a spectacle. Moving down, we have the tongue. It's long, forked, and constantly flicking in and out. We'll get into exactly how that works as a sensory tool in just a second. Then there's the mouth, packed with slender, insanely sharp teeth. And notice how they curve backward. It acts like a one-way trap. Once a snake bites down, that backward curve makes it almost impossible for the prey to pull back and escape. Now, for the venomous snakes like rattlesnakes, they have something extra. They have specialized elongated, hollow teeth called fangs. These work exactly like hypodermic needles, piercing the skin and injecting lethal venom straight into the prey. Okay, what about the internal organs? How exactly do you cram a fully functioning digestive and respiratory system into what is essentially a tube? Nature's solution is elongation. The snake's liver, its stomach, its lungs, they're all stretched out, becoming super long and narrow so they fit perfectly inside that slender body cavity. And the skeleton is just as specialized. The spine is incredibly flexible so it can easily bend and weave. Attached to every single bone in that spine is a curved pair of ribs. All of this is wrapped up in those thick, waterproof scales. But that skin isn't just armor, it's highly elastic. The stomach, the ribs, and the skin are all perfectly designed to stretch out in a massive way. This lets the snake comfortably accommodate a meal that might be significantly wider than the snake's entire body. I mentioned we'd talk about that forked tongue, and the biology behind it is just wild. Now, snakes actually see pretty well up close, and they react incredibly fast to movement. And while they don't have external ears, they can hear very low-frequency sounds. And they feel ground vibrations right through their belly skin to sense if an animal is coming. But their absolute superpower is chemical. See, when a snake flicks its tongue out, it isn't just tasting the air. It's actually snagging microscopic scent particles floating around it. It then pulls that forked tongue back inside and presses the tips directly into two specific pits on the roof of its mouth. That's called the Jacobson's organ. This organ instantly analyzes that chemical signature, letting the snake know immediately if there's a meal, an enemy, or a potential mate nearby. Some snakes take their environmental sensors to a whole other level. Take the copperhead, for example. Along with rattlesnakes, they belong to a group of snakes called pit vipers. They have this tiny, specialized opening right between their eye and their nostril. That is a heat-sensitive pit. And these pits operate exactly like high-tech thermal cameras, registering incredibly minute changes in the air temperature. Since a mouse or a bird gives off body heat, a snake with these pits can literally sense the thermal outline of that animal, which means they don't need any light at all. These pits allow them to track and hunt warm-blooded prey flawlessly in absolute pitch-black darkness. Section 4. Hunting and feeding habits, the patient predators. So, armed with all these amazing senses, how does a snake actually pull off a hunt? Well, they'll eat a huge variety of things: mice, frogs, insects, birds, sometimes even other snakes. But their main strategy is the ambush. They are incredibly patient. A snake might wait completely motionless for hours or even days, just waiting for the perfect meal to wander by. When it does, step 1 is a lightning-fast strike. Now, if the animal is small enough, it's just grabbed by those sharp teeth and forced down the throat alive. But for bigger prey, they have to move to step 2, immobilization. Think about it. A large, kicking, biting animal could seriously damage a delicate snake from the inside. So, venomous snakes use their bite to quickly render the prey helpless. Non-venomous snakes use constriction. They coil their strong, muscular bodies around the prey until it suffocates. Only after the animal is completely still do they move to step 3, which is swallowing it whole. Finally, step 4 is digestion. Interestingly enough, venom actually helps jumpstart that digestive process from the inside out, breaking down this massive meal over the course of several days. Let's circle back to step 3 for a second, because swallowing an animal that's physically larger than your own head, it seems completely impossible, right? The key thing to remember is that snakes absolutely cannot chew their food. It has to go down a hole. And the reason they can do this is that a snake's jaw is a total marvel of engineering. The bones in the skull are only loosely joined together, which lets the mouth open insanely wide. Plus, the two sides of their lower jaw are not fused together by solid bone in the front like ours are. Instead, they are connected by a super stretchy, elastic strap of tissue. This means the left and right lower jaw bones can physically spread apart independently of each other. They basically stretch horizontally over the prey, allowing the snake to slowly walk its mouth over its meal. Section 5. How snakes move. Navigating without limbs. We know how they eat, so let's look at how they actually get around. Biomechanics show us that the way a snake moves is entirely dictated by whatever terrain it's on. They don't just have one way to slither. Our sources break down 3 main methods of movement. First up is the most common one, S-shaped curves. The snake undulates its body back and forth, and the thick scales on its belly grip onto the tiny bumps and rocks on the ground, letting the muscles push the snake forward. This S-curve motion, by the way, is exactly how they swim through water too. But what if a snake lives in the desert, where loose sand just slips away and provides zero grip? That's where the second method comes in, sidewinding. The snake throws its head forward and to the side, lifting loops of its body right off the hot sand and basically rolling sideways. And third, for really tight spaces or for climbing straight up, they use the inchworm method. Oh, and real quick, here's a crazy fact before we look closer at that climbing method. There are actually a few rare species of snake in the rainforest that can literally flatten out their ribs and glide through the air from tree to tree. Absolutely wild.
But getting back to the climbing, let's really look at the difference between a standard S-curve and the inchworm technique. When a snake has to scale a vertical tree trunk or squeeze straight into a super narrow burrow, those wide S-curves just aren't going to cut it. Instead, the snake coils up the front end of its body to get a solid grip on the rough bark. Once that front part is securely anchored, it pulls its entire tail section upward, kind of bunching its body together. Then it anchors the back half, releases the front, and pushes its head straight up again. It is a very slow, very methodical, and incredibly muscular way to climb, but it lets them easily conquer vertical drops and climbs.
Section 6. The snake life cycle, from birth to shedding. We are wrapping up our curriculum explainer by looking at how these reptiles actually start their lives and how they physically grow. It turns out snakes have 2 completely different strategies for reproduction, and surprise, surprise, it largely comes down to the climate they live in. Some species lay eggs. The female will scope out a warm, damp, totally hidden spot to deposit up to 50 eggs at a single time. It has to be damp to keep the eggs from drying out and hidden to keep scavengers away. Once they're laid, the mother usually just leaves immediately, though a handful of rare species will stick around to guard them. The second strategy, which is super common in cooler places like much of North America, is live birth. Why? Well, the ground in those regions is simply too cold to incubate eggs, so the mother keeps the eggs inside her own body. That way, she can actively warm them up just by basking in the sun. As a huge bonus, the developing babies are kept completely safe from predators. These live babies are typically born later in the year, around late summer or early fall. For the egg layers, after about 6 to 12 weeks of incubation, it is hatching time. Now, a snake egg isn't hard and easily breakable like a chicken egg. It is actually tough, leathery, and pretty flexible. So to physically break out, the baby snake is born with a very specialized tool, a tiny, razor-sharp egg tooth right on its snout. It uses this to slice open that tough shell and squeeze out, just like a hatching Western hog-nosed baby does. And here is a really crucial takeaway about baby snakes. They don't get a childhood. Most adult snakes offer zero maternal care. The absolute second they hatch or are born live, they are fully independent, miniature replicas of the adults. They already have all the built-in instincts they need to hunt small insects or worms right out of the gate. And if they happen to be a venomous species, they have fully functional venom from day one. In some cases, a baby's venom can actually be more concentrated and potent than their parents'. As these baby snakes successfully hunt and eat, they naturally start to grow. But remember that tough, waterproof skin we talked about earlier? It doesn't stretch or grow with them. In order to get bigger, a snake literally has to shed its entire outer layer of skin. The whole process kicks off when the snake grows a brand new layer of skin right underneath the old one. Once that new skin is ready to go, the old layer on top starts to loosen up. The snake will then find a rough rock or a textured piece of bark and intentionally rub its head against it until the old skin snags and starts to roll backwards. After that, the snake just wriggles its way forward, peeling the old skin completely off. It leaves it behind turned completely inside out, just like a discarded sock, which is exactly what an eastern fox snake does. Because young snakes are growing so fast, they might go through this shedding process about 3 times a year. Fully grown adults usually slow down and only shed maybe once or twice a year. And that wraps up this explainer. We've seen how their ectothermic nature, their insanely specialized jaws, their thermal and chemical sensors, and their highly adaptable life cycles make them one of nature's ultimate survivors. From the tiny burrowing blind snakes all the way up to the massive aquatic anacondas, they really are a marvel of biological engineering. Which leaves us with a pretty compelling thought. If a creature with literally 0 limbs can adapt to conquer almost every corner of the globe, what other jaw-dropping survival strategies might be hiding out there in the wild, just waiting for us to understand them? Thanks so much for diving into the source material with me today. Keep asking questions, keep studying the details, and we'll see you in the next explainer.